because for us guys, again, we'll talk about this later, it's really, really new. We don't even have a vocabulary to help us explain what it's like. So we're on this journey of discovery. I'm quite looking forward to that. And yeah, look, I'll shut up because I'm the oldest one and I'll rabble on all day. Welcome to the Full Stop Podcast, hosted by Sarah Lawrence, Berenice Smith and me, Michael Hughes, where we, with all our special guests, explore what it means to be childless and hoping we can help you feel validated, seen and inspired, and in turn, help you navigate this very different life to the one we thought we were going to have. And this episode is a little different. In September, we all attended the Storyhouse Childless event in Chester, which is in the north of England, and we are using a recording from inside a theatre, so the sound quality will be very different to what you are used to. Storyhouse is a charity housed in a mixed-use building in Chester, and it incorporates a library, theatres, an independent cinema, a restaurant, and is a community and creative social space. They hold many events throughout the year, and one of those being Storyhouse Childless. Storyhouse is not a childless organisation. They choose to support the childless and the child-free community by hosting this event. You can find out more in episode 64, Telling Stories with Storyhouse, where we take a deep dive with the organisers and the creators of the event. This year, Berenice, Sarah and I were part of different presentations. Sarah, with her colleague and our very dear friend Karen Enfield de Vries, had a very popular workshop, How to Befriend Your Inner Critic When You're Not a Parent. Berenice took part in the Overcoming Othering panel discussion, and I was part of the Men Without Children discussion with our good friend Andy Harrod and our two new friends, Mark Briggs van Leeuwen and Sam Ryley. And it is this content we are using for our International Men's Day episode. Now, our discussion explored what it means to be a childless man in these present times, the challenges we face across the different generations, and we felt it was a fantastic example of how it's okay to talk. Because this year's theme is being good role models, and we think this is a great example. Now, not everyone on the panel identifies as childless, but Sam showed great empathy and curiosity in wanting to understand what it means to be childless. And he's a great advocate for building bridges between the childless and the child-free. There was a Q&A session at the end of the recording, but sadly some of the audio was unable to be used, so that's been edited out, as have the responses, because there'll be no context. So you'll only hear a few of the comments and questions. But anyway, that's enough from me. Let's press play.
Men's panel, so Men Without Children. So for the next hour, in our lovely company, we'll talk about our childless experiences and how as childless men we experience society and the community we wish to build. Just to say, as with all sessions, you're very welcome to come and go as you need to prioritise your own well-being. We will also have time for Q&A at the end, so if you've got questions, you're very welcome to ask us towards the end. But we're also about during the break, etc., so you can come and chat to us as well then. I'm Andy. If you've been here all weekend, you'll have seen me I've been part of Storyhouse for the last few years now. I'm childless, not by choice. I don't have any surnames on me. So I'll introduce the panel, but I'll let them tell their stories and they can give you their surnames if they wish. So we have Mark, who's also childless, not by choice, Sam, who's childless by choice, and Michael, who's childless, not by choice. So we'll begin with our individual stories. I'll start with Mark, and we'll go in this order. You can hear from me at the end. And then we'll build on topics we discuss within them throughout the panel. So over to Mark.
Hello everyone, so my last name is Briggs van Leeuwen, and I wanted to repeat that. So childless not by choice. I've done it the last 2 years, and now I'm here. Our background of becoming childless not by choice was like many, trying and then finding out that you're going to have to seek help, and then inexplained infertility and everything that comes with that our journey. It's, I guess, as a man sitting almost on the sideline as well, while being as involved as you can be and trying to support and trying not to forget about your own feelings as well. And now, a few years on, go through that door of definitely knowing we're going to be childless, and then coming to terms with that, and trying to build a new life, or trying to figure out what that rest of our lives might look like, and finding contentedness within that. And there's a lot of looking back for us right now as well, looking back at sort of sliding doors moments of what happened, and had we known now what we know, had we known then what we know now, would we have made the same decisions? And so sort of putting ourselves on the spectrum of how childless, feeling maybe even a bit of child-free, although because ultimately it's also a choice to stop trying, isn't it? So does that make me child-free by choice to an extent? No, because we've been through a lot to say we're definitely childless, not by choice. But that's a short introduction for me.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm child-free by choice, and this is my first childless. So I saw the promo for last year and realised that this term childless actually applies to me, which was a bit of a surprise. I'd never considered that. I'd never considered myself childless or part of that group. I didn't know what it was, so I expressed some interest to Nicola and Dawn and said that's a really good idea. What type of person goes to it? And they said, well, it's for everybody, and then stuck me on a panel. Two panels actually, yeah. So here I am. It's hard, really. I think I'm very aware of there's a lot of trauma and grief around this subject, and I didn't know how to feel about speaking to that because with me, I haven't gone through that experience and stuff, so I am very sensitive to it, and I hopefully won't say anything that offends anybody, but just I am very, very aware that that's a big part of what this event is as well. But yeah, so I guess having realised that I'm child-free and fit into childless, I'm kind of forced to unpack it, and I'm sort of doing that live really because it's so fresh. What does it mean? What does it mean to me? Why did I make this choice? And I was, going back through, how I've lived my life, and is that the right choice for me? I think it is, because I just never felt like I would be a dad. I don't feel like there's anything missing. And I just kind of, maybe it's a symptom of the fact that I'm not a kind of 9-to-5er. I haven't really kind of gone down the kind of normal route society-wise. I'm a freelance creative, I'm a photographer and a filmmaker, and you kind of exist outside of the kind of normal rat race, I guess. Is that a factor in my choice? I don't know. I know it's the right choice, but I'm still trying to unpick it, and I don't know if anyone else is in the same boat, really, but it'd be nice to find out. So do ask questions and, find me afterwards as well, and I'd love to talk to you all.
Hi, my name's Michael Hughes. I'm one half of a childless marriage and 1/3 of a childless podcast called Full Stop. I just have to say how bloody pleased I am to see the amount of people in the audience right now. That the reason for that will come evident a bit later on, but we were put up against the women's panel, and I thought, God, there's going to be no one. So thank you so much for coming. So my story is, my wife and I's story is that we tried for many years to have children, went through the IVF, the whole gamut of infertility treatments, and obviously at the end of it didn't work. And we found ourselves absolutely smashed and broken at the end of that. The toxic roller coaster that the IVF industry puts you on is horrendous. And we were only just talking with Christina Archetti at lunch that there is the trauma of the infertility journey is real, and it's great to see that Christina, for instance, is looking at how to research that. It took us 10 years to get out of that hole, and me being me, now I'm part of a podcast. Andy and I together started the Childless Men's Community, which is a Facebook community. We're still trying to figure out how that works, what that means, because for us guys, again, we'll talk about this later, it's really, really new. We don't even have a vocabulary to help us explain what it's like. So we're on this journey of discovery. I'm quite looking forward to that. Look, I'll shut up because I'm the oldest one and I'll rabble on all day.
He hasn't got Google Maps out yet. It's an inside joke, but he does know where you're from. Exploring your location. That's a job, though. I should be excited by that, but no. While I continue thinking my hobby, I'm probably to blame for the parallel sessions because I was a part of the steering group, but I missed lots of meetings. I'm like Michael. I'm amazed at how many people are here for us to discuss this topic. So I'm also married. My wife's in the front row. In our 30s, we tried for children after we got married, and there's this sort of expectation that house, marriage, kids, it would just happen. That was the story I had in my head, and it didn't happen. And we went through the IVF, the toxic hope of the IVF, and I think I was saying this earlier to Ed, I think, might be wrong, it might be someone else, but this idea that, might be Sam actually, that with the IVF, we did get offered counselling, so no, it was Ed. This then, and I didn't want to go down that route, even so I'm a therapist, as well as a job because it meant I had to come to terms with this journey being over, this expectation that kids would happen because we were married wasn't true. It's going to be a different story, and I didn't quite know what path I was going to go down next, if you like. Turned out to be geography. And so, for me, it's looking back, I've told that story in much more detail at times, like the IVF, the toxicness, the sort of dirtiness, the sort of idea of the man being the provider. Like, I remember saying, can we just wait a few more months because we need finances. Didn't change jobs, didn't win the lottery, so I'm not really sure what those months did in terms of money. But there was this sort of sense of, well, who am I in this role as a parent, as a dad? And also there's a sense of wanting kids to be a different type of dad. And so when it just didn't happen, I couldn't do that. It's like, well, who am I now? And I think from that point, I've got IVF written down here, so we can talk about that. But I'm also more interested in talking about the unpicking of our choices. I think Sam it feels quite publicly trying to sort of tease out why he's childless by choice, in a sense. But also, we all made choices to go down that route. And then choices of, well, what happens next when we find that journey isn't possible. So, over to you. Who would like to say sort of a bit more about their choices, a bit more about teasing out the choices we make and what we do when those choices don't come fulfilled?
It's a good question, Andy. The choices, and I think looking back especially, I think we were almost sold, as the IVF industry does, sold the hope, and that's what they sell, isn't it? And that's it's a capitalist drive behind it, and that's how you can feel while you're paid privately for supposedly a wonderful clinic, that there's not even a service element to it that makes you feel any better about anything that's going on. Then they just treat you. Yeah, well, I'm sure you've all experienced that, and they don't treat you well. But with that poor guidance as well, because they're obviously very careful about what they tell you your chances are, and yeah, I think we went down the route of just going all out because we had to be sure about ruling out everything there was to rule out until we maybe find an answer, which we maybe never did, maybe kind of did after we had to give up on it because they hadn't done the proper screening testing or hadn't properly listened to us, and then only after we were broken and spent, as Michael describes. I don't know how he did it for that long, to be fair, but we were broken and completely empty. And then we found other things out that may have helped had we known that before we started. But our decision making around that, it was literally just going for every option to get what we wanted, and that had a big toll financially and definitely emotionally.
Do you want to go?
No, you
in terms of unpicking choices, I think for myself it's something that things that I've considered in the past and things that have maybe played a factor in my choices are there's things like climate change, which I'm conscious of. Adding more people to the planet is a consideration. I think I don't know whether it's something that's driven my choice or whether it's just something that's there and I'm aware of. Other things are just that the world isn't a fantastic place at the moment, and has the fact that the world's in such a state, from my point of view, affected my decision to not bring anybody into it, and also the fact that I'm single and I probably couldn't do that on my own anyway. But scientifically, so those are some of the things that go into consideration, really, and I still don't know where I'm at with it. I just know that, I don't have any more to say on that, really.
Very nice. Choice, eking out decisions. I don't think there was one for us. It was just we want to be parents, and for our own reasons, there was a drive for that. I'll talk about myself in that. I'm Gen X, so sorry if I'm very binary, and it's not that I'm ignoring the fact that we are more than that, but it's just the way my brain has worked for the last 50 years, so I apologise for that. But not sure where I was going with that. But anyway, point is, I grew up with parents that were war babies, and so there was a lot lacking in our house. Now, please don't think that my parents are bad people. They're not. But the desire to have children for me stems from that. Stems from the fact that I wanted to be different to my dad. I wanted to have a really close relationship with another human being that was produced by Vicky and I. So as you can see, that still sits there. So it wasn't really a choice. It was what we were going to do, and we were absolutely adamant about it. And like Mark said, you just got to get it done. And so you're focused, and that's what you do to try and get what you want.
Yeah, Michael and I have talked about this before. I'm like him in the sense of there was something missing in how I got brought up. It didn't quite meet what I wanted. And so having children was definitely desired to have children. My wife to have something of us together, but it was also for me personally about repair, about offering something different, perhaps maybe wanting to repair myself through that as well as obviously offer my children something more. And so it felt, not a choice, but also a choice, because I sort of chose that's how I wanted that to go along. And we chose to do IVF, which we did the 2 cycles we got for free on NHS, and we then chose to stop because we couldn't afford it. There was no money for that. And it's interesting, so I was thinking of like Sam sings about the world not being a safe place at the moment, the environment, sort of not quite fully knowing why we make choices or why we're driven to sing, so it feels like it's a choiceless choice. I think there's still probably for me some unpacking in why I drove for parenthood, and then sort of why we stopped and how I've unpacked that and processed that since. And talking last night in the pub with friends, and we were all saying that if we were brought up in a less perinatal society, one way you could see alternatives where a child-free lifestyle was more accepted, more valued. I don't think it would have took away the drive to be parents, but I do wonder if it would soften the grieving process, soften the sort of points of acceptance in the sense of, okay, this isn't going to happen, but it's not also a guarantee. I was brought up in a Catholic school. It's pretty much, you look at a girl, she'll get pregnant. Yeah. So there wasn't those other alternative choices. So I think that's where I'd like to go next, but obviously we can all circle back to where you want to go as well. But that sense of community and what we're learning and what we're trying to offer back to the childless community, but also what we can learn from each other, because I feel like it wouldn't have changed my choices, but it might have helped the outcomes of those choices not happening. So I'm thinking. So who would like to go next?
Okay, so we met on Zoom.
Yeah.
Just to have a chat about this beforehand. And I asked the guys a question because I'm fairly new to this, and it's a question about whether if you've been through the process of trying to have children and you haven't been able to, and you are now childless, not by choice, is there a drive to get to a place where you are kind of child-free, or does that the grief and trauma therefore define you until the end of your days? I mean, how I would like to learn about that. If you guys could.
So, like the fluidity of our change in identity in relation to being childless.
Yeah. Okay, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
But no, it's a really good question. I think I'll hand it over to Michael or Mark first, actually.
Want to go, Michael?
How long we got?
About half an hour.
Okay, so this is only my opinion. Don't shoot me. But, and Sam knows what's coming because we've talked about it. To the way that I told you I was Gen X and non-binary, the way that my brain works is that, and we've heard lots of talk about nuances in the other presentations so far, but the way that my brain works is that being childless and being child-free are two very different ways of existing in the world. Now, again, don't shoot me, because, as they say, we wanted something, we didn't have the choice, whereas Sam has had a choice and exercised that, which is absolutely his right. So I don't want you to think that this is us against them. So it's very two different ways of existing in the world. And I get a bit of a bee in my bonnet when we talk about community, because one of the things that our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, I used to work with the Robert, said when he was going for re-election, he said, if you are not seen, you are not counted. And at lunch we were talking about this, where the childless community, being what it is in the shadow of the child-free community, because they talk about their choice, which again is their right to do, and they should exercise that. But the childless don't talk about their situation because, of course, it's very briefing. And so that's where I see I could play a role, because I'm just a big, gruff, hairy bloke who can probably get away with telling people stuff, even if they don't want to hear it. And so I think that's something I would like you all to think about as you leave this at least today, is how are you contributing to the silence, or how are you contributing to being seen so that the childless community can stand on its own and then advocate change, because that's what we all want, I believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'll pass to Mark in a minute. And I think that's the important thing about Sam's question, is what helps us to grow, to give back. And so for Michael, it's definitely much childless, the identity, that's what works to enable childless, not by choice people, to be viewed. And I think that's a really, really valid point. Over to Mark.
Thank you. I think lots to address there. I think when we met on Zoom on this topic before, I almost dug my heels in the sand when when Michael said that it's binary, and there's only two groups and two completely different ways of existing. And I don't disagree with him, actually, because I said this before. Any analogies that, like, once you pass through that door, knowing you're going to be childless, you're in a completely different space. You need to find a new identity, really. But the reason I sort of stepped back when Michael said that is because I thought, well, there might be people here who are sort of striving to at least feel child-free, because that feeling of being childless is grief-stricken, it's heavy, it's something we're trying to process and get through, and we want to see a light at the end of the tunnel and want to feel like we can live a fulfilled life. And if it's the only way for me to feel like that is to identify as reaching child-freeness, allowing myself to then enjoy parts of child-free life without guilt, then I'm probably going to use that term once I get there. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I kind of see it as a goal, and that's why I wanted to say that today. And after Michael explained how it is two different types of existing, you're allowed to identify yourself and use whatever word you want to use for that to identify yourself, and then give yourself that space to feel happy and live without guilt and enjoy the child-free parts of life without guilt.
I'm not setting up a fight.
No. We've talked about this, and again, this is just about our opinions and seeing the world, and people identify with each one of us in different ways. So my response, because Andy knows what my response is. My response to that is that again, as childless people, I'm really happy that my grief walks alongside me as I navigate life. It's not the best place to be, but it sits alongside me. And when we talk about community, if and again, this is my binary mind, if we talk about flipping from childless to child-free, what are you saying about those people who identify as childless? That they would never be happy? And so that's why I say about they are two different ways of existing in the world, and they can both have fulfilling lives and both be different. And both be happy. Because my wife and I, we're having a blast. We've just travelled halfway around the world, meeting all you lovely people. So it's not all doom and gloom. And what I would like to say to those childless people that are not at that point of acceptance that we are, is okay. As you can see, I'd still get emotional about that. But it's okay. It will be okay. And so I will always be childless because I want people to understand it'll be okay.
Thank you, Michael and Mark. And I think there it shows that as we navigate when you're not on choice, childless journey, it's about, I think, to be able to get to a point where you can live fulfilling life for you, it is about, well, what works for me. And so it feels like for Mark, having that goal is about part of him moving along his journey so he can live the fulfilling life that Michael's able to do with the childless label, because that label has a certain meaning for Michael. And I think that's also, why I like Sam's question and wanted Mark and Michael to talk about is they're both offering different viewpoints, but on a sense to reach the same point.
We're finally agreeing.
We can cancel the box for that. And I think for me, I am more on the Michael side. I think there's a part of me that can see Mark's viewpoint. I've never really been one that chased goals and aims, but I get the use of that language, and I get the use of different labels for identities to allow you to exist meaningfully and purposefully. I think for me at one point it felt like the childlessness was here, and it's definitely in the rawness of the grief. And at times it spread out more here. It was much more on my side, and that was when I was on the full stop a bit. So now I've got Radio 5, Storyhouse, Men's Community, and then this year I've sort of been quite absent, which Michael noticed.
It's not going to notice. Just say so.
And in a way, that's because life opened up. Finished a PhD, full-time teaching in uni, finishing a project in Orkney, catching up on holidays, not having holidays due to a PhD. And I feel like all through that, the identity of being childless didn't really change. That would be the term I'd use when people ask about kids. No, we don't, unfortunately, we're childless, etc. But it just lessened, I think, to allow me to live. And I think the reason I got to the point where I was living wasn't just the capitalist treadmill. I think that's a big part of it. That's a whole different topic. But also it was because of the community that I built within the childless community with Michael, that there's the space you can go to, you can talk to, you can be heard, you can be witnessed, that allowed me to have more sense of self that, well, actually it's okay to maybe be an academic and not be ashamed that I'm not an academic dad, that I'm not a less than academic, or I'm not a less than runner, therapist, etc., cat lover, husband. And it's interesting that child-free never came into that, but I can see how there's aspects of that life when I was out walking with Rachel with friends that this wouldn't be happening if we had kids. And I really enjoyed those days. They're really cool stuff we've done this year. But I can see how it felt child-free, but it was always childless. So for me, there is this spectrum.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I don't actually think that I'll ever feel child-free, because I don't know if you remember this Stella Duffy session as well, that grief and the trauma, and trust me, the word trauma I don't use lightly at all, but we all know it is trauma. It's I've said it before, it's that whole shift in your being where you have to restart your identity. So I don't actually think I'll ever feel child-free. I just when I was thinking about having an audience today, if you want to feel child-free eventually, and I was kind of sticking up for anyone who might see that as a goal as well, because I can see that. But personally, we've been through so much, and what it's done to our friendships, our connections in our life, and it's destroyed a lot of it. And it's not for lack of trying on our part to still build bridges and find new ways and see how we can relate to other people, because when you push into a different way of being, and you've learned so much about yourself, because you're going through a period of a lot of self-reflection, and you have to try and rebuild some bridges, and some people just don't connect with you anymore because they just don't understand. And that's, I want to add to that.
And I think just to pick up on the point of re-relating, like what happens sort of next, we could talk about how we manage, how we process, how we deal with degree, but I'd like to bring in Sam a bit more as well here. You don't have to go next. But the idea of re-relating, like, I think when you go, it's not by choice. You do drift from friends. You do lose friends who go on to have kids. And especially then their life becomes very centered around the children. But I'm just wondering, from both a child not by choice, child is by choice, or child-free perspectives, what are we doing now to make new friendships, to have belonging within our local communities, as well as maybe the wider childless community? And just wondering from Sam's point of view, like, how's that been for you throughout the whole thing of being childless, like friendships, or how does it work for you? Is it any different?
It's been great for me, because I've just tried to become a part of my community as much as possible by sort of adding positivity into the pot, really. And through that, I end up meeting people all the time, but quite often the people, and I'm really lucky because quite often the people I'm meeting on that journey are the kind of like-minded individuals that are incredibly engaged with the community and active, and some of them are parents and some of them aren't. But we're generally coming together on sort of common causes, really. Things such as Good for Nothing, GFN, Holly and Una in today. And that's a group of people that get together and just do good things for the community. I've made so many friends through that, and my work as well. I do photography and film, as I said, so huge range of clients and things like that, and often they turn into friends. And it's not really that whether they do or don't have kids comes into it that often. Sometimes people won't be able to attend, an evening or dinner or something like that because, they need to get childcare, or they haven't been able to get childcare. And sometimes I have friends who, they'll ask if can we go round to their house and do that. I mean, that's swings and roundabouts as well. That is kind of a double-edged thing because, you're kind of thinking, it'd be really nice to see you, but don't want to put up with your kids as well. So, they're annoying, So, it's a fact sometimes. It just is. But so I just surround myself with positive people, and it just doesn't come into it that much. The whole question of difference between us.
And I just wondered then about the idea of finding common ground. So how Mark, you've found making new friends, and is common ground enough, or is the grief you carry, does that interfere a bit more than if you don't carry it or didn't have it?
I'm not quite sure I answer that question, but as I said, I think we're quite a way along a path of acceptance, and our life is a little bit different now, where people that we frequent with are their parents, but they're of our age, so their kids have gone. And so we're re-establishing friendships with, people we've known for a very long time, but we drifted apart because of our different journeys. And so, look, again, it's actually quite a good time, I think. And so what we're doing now is we're talking with our friends Julie and Ian, and when we retire in a few years' time, it's all about, where are we going on holiday together? It's not all about grief, trauma, and isolation and sadness. It's actually, there are, just a different way of being. And if you've got people that have been constant through your life, you sort of ebb and flow together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I agree on things can be fluid like that. And I'm sure that with friends, because I live abroad, away from many friends I had through my teenage years and early 20s, and that are really close friends, and I know as soon as I'm there again, we pick up where we left off. But other friendships, and especially making new friendships after everything that's happened, we've definitely avoided the kind that have kids. Yeah. Not interested. They're hard to get in touch with or hard to plan things with. So I guess you're kind of in control a little bit of picking and choosing. What you're not in control of is picking and choosing the friends that you thought you could rely on, you thought you could build on, and they drop off and they're gone. But I don't know, from mindset as well, that once because we're talking about a lifetime here, and we're talking about time being fluid and how things change within us over time. And so maybe in 5-10 years' time, we reconnect with someone and we get on like a house on fire again and get to spend meaningful moments with them then. So I don't necessarily give up on the friendships, but it's I guess sometimes it's hard when you feel like they've hurt you by not being there, to then reconnect with them and try and rekindle a friendship and see if that's possible. But I think, with some friendships it might definitely be possible.
I was just thinking about a conversation we had about the childless community. I'm going to probably be a little bit controversial here, but I'm gagging to get this in. So when we originally, the original title about this session was going to be childless men in the community, or something like that. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And one of the things, when I mentioned it was really great to see people here, because we were put up against the women's session. And I have to admit, I got a bit upset about that. Because one of the things that we as a childless community are not doing is being inclusive of each other. Right, so there are lots of female groups, lots of them, that exclude men. And I understand that women want a safe space, because I want to recognise that men have done some awful and continue to do some awful things in our society. But I can tell you, and Andy will probably back me up, that the childless men that are in the childless men's community they're all grieving. I think we're close to 400 people around the world now, and they're all grieving. But you know what the saddest thing is when you ask them, do you feel that you're included in the childless community? They will say, no one cares, because no one includes us. And so that's why I'm going to do a bit of a plug for the podcast here, because that's why I'm really, really, really proud of what we're producing in our podcast and our community, because I think from that point of view, we are the only ones that include anyone. However you identify, you are welcome. But I'd really like you all to think about when you leave here, do you create a space for men to belong in the childless community? Particularly those that run groups, particularly the ones that are part of support groups and that sort of thing. Because, right now, a lot of childless men feel that no one cares.
But I think that's where the friendship thing, that's what I was thinking of, the friendship thing, the common ground that Sam talks about is like, where do I put my energy? How do I meet people who might be like-minded, or I might get on with, I might have fun with, I might do stuff with? And I think the men do need a support group of their own. I think it's difficult for men to talk. We're socialised not to express emotions, to be emotional, except anger. But I do also think that the wild thing of, well, where do you go from that point? We need to be in bigger communities. Hence the question of friendships. And it's interesting to hear Michael's experience of coming back to older friends when the kids have left, and therefore perhaps not such a big part of friends as well, so you can share more interests again, you can share that common ground again. A bit more like Mark, where friends are still with younger children or getting towards teenagers, so we'll wait and see if that happens. But I've definitely, through the PhD, been an older person, met younger people, and unfortunately, middle age. Stella said we're not going to live forever. And at the start of the PhD, which was pre the Storyhouse stuff, I wasn't in a place where I could hang out with people who had the potential to be parents and therefore drift, and I'd hurt again. But through the community, through the men's group, through Storyhouse, I suppose Briggs is quite involved in Gateway Childless Collective, I've met other people and other couples. It allowed me to hang out with younger people, maybe pretend I'm young again, until the hangovers kick in, without being so scared that they might drift again. I think that's quite a big thing about the community, but maybe some of that's me, because I do therapy, gone through therapy. And I think really to go back to Michael's point, is where do we create community for men, women, and the whole fluidity of gender in between, where everyone can feel safe and start not only rebuilding their lives, but recreating their lives in a new direction. And it's 2:15 now, so we've got something we'd like to finish on, which may or may not work, but at least the next 10 minutes on those thoughts that the homework Michael's given you around community. What was the first one?
Oh God! See, I'm the oldest one now. Someone help me out. Someone help me out here, please.
Oh, that's the first one.
Maybe the audience will remember. We'll go after questions for 10 minutes, and we'll come back.
Thanks, Natalie, for your contribution. Yeah, I think the issue of semantics is really key to what's being discussed in the panel. So on one hand, we have someone like Mark, who is childless, working towards perhaps at some point in the future being child-free. And then we have someone like Michael, who's clearly defined as childless, and that potentially is unlikely to change. It's a label we're happy with. And in the middle here, we have Sam, who's kind of child-free and perhaps comes across as carefree. And so the child-free label, which initially I thought that's who I am, because I'm childless by choice. So therefore, am I child-free because I've chosen it? Or do I also feel that because in society I'm invisible? And so there is also grief in that choice. And I've grieved it 1,000 times. Now, Jodie mentioned in one of the talks yesterday that at some point later in her life she missed out on the opportunity to join the normal people. And I suppose that's in a way something that I grieve myself is I'm not going to fit into that. So I'm child free and perhaps not care. That's just something else like that.
Right.
The stigmas are.
Yeah, I was thinking on building a very the childless label. I think that's a really good point, Steve. So thank you for sharing a very personal point. With childless, I wonder, Michael and I think at one point it felt very much I was less than a man. I was lacking. I wasn't the norm. Now it feels more like it's a statement of just a part of who I am. So I was sort of just wondering that childless stage would be, but as you grieve, as you work through it, does it shift its flavour? Does it shift from a negative to just a fact, as much as facts are constructed?
But some of the people who were fantastically supportive from my local wargaming group were all child-free by choice. And the reason why they were so lovely and supportive was because they had thought about it at that point. And I always just think that anyone that wants to get involved with things like this absolutely should, however they come at it. That's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you. What has been passed around, many things I'd just like to say is that it's actually been a pleasure being with Sam, because it's that curiosity that really makes the difference. Well, for me it does, to think that he cares. So I just want to say that while the next one was up.
Thanks, man.
No worries.
Okay, so it might be a slightly difficult question for the panel to answer, but I would be interested to know my current interest. I'm 60. My current interest is in creating community. I've been talking to Jodie about this, creating a mutual aid community in my local area, in Kendal, not a wider area, but in Kendal, for people ageing without children. And I would definitely want to be including both men and women and genders along the spectrum. And I just wondered if you had initial thoughts, or perhaps I should ask you another time, about how to approach men locally who may be interested in contributing to that project.
The initial thought I had as you were telling me is invite them. We need men to do X. Because again, my generation want to feel useful. They balk at, talking about feelings and that sort of stuff, and so that's why it's very hard to get men of my vintage to sort of come along to convoyage and things like that. But I want to feel useful, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So if you make it clear and simple, we are very simple creatures. I need help, and I'm sure that will work. Not quite sure when you do that, but...
Just to build on that, the concept of Men in Sheds, which is like a mental health program or a tackling loneliness program, how we wish to phrase it, and it fits Michael's thing of like men want to be active. And when we're in Men in Sheds, the research will suggest that because we're alongside each other, because we're doing an activity, I'm using we as men, they tend to then talk a little bit. And so I'm sure that can happen in mixed genders, and other research, other stuff suggests that does happen in groups, but often men need an activity. So I think if you invite them and it's more than just a chatting space, it's an activity space,
Right.
that could work.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
No, you first, here.
I'll do a really quick one. But I just say branding's really important on something like that. Just brand it to your target audience. So it's going to be something that feels comfortable for them to go to, then be highly visible and be really positive, because positivity brings people in. So
Yeah. I was interested in your good for nothing, or somebody's.
talk to those two behind you.
And have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
Andy's.
Andy's Man Club.
No.
Not mine.
No, not yours. No, sorry. So I learned about it. They're not in Chester, but I know they're in many local areas. So also on small scale, local communities, and they are a man club purely because it's for men that are struggling. And so there's already a group of men that are at least trying to talk, learning to talk, and want to feel part of the community. So that's definitely, I think, a target group, and they're all over the country. And it was set up because Andy is actually the person who committed suicide, and I think his mom and best friend have set this up, and there are in many local areas that might be one to look up.
It's very helpful.
Thanks for listening. Now, we know this was not the best audio, but we felt it was a very important discussion. And our heartfelt thanks goes out to Andy, Mark and Sam for being champions to let us air this episode. And we'd love to hear your feedback on the topic, and you can find us at Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, or you can find our contact details at our website www.thefullstoppod.com, where you can also sign up for our listeners list, where you can keep up to date with all that's going on in our part of the community, or you may have a burning topic that we've not covered. Please reach out, as we'd like to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. You can also sign up for our inclusive online community here, but the website will fill you in on all you need to know. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.